Okay, slab delivered by a contractor who is working on a kitchen remodeling job. And this tree had been cut at least a year ago. It's obviously not all the way dry, but we're going to surface it down and see what they can make as a table. It's obviously didn't dry well. Way too cracked here. You can see through the entire slab. Got a big hunk missing here. They mentioned a resin fill. You can see that this entire piece, it's cut from here a quarter of the way around in a with the chainsaw. So you can see this here. It goes all the way around. So it comes basically from an inch from the bottom side, what's the bottom now, to 1.5 inches from the top side. And this whole thing is it's a true cut. I mean, it's a quarter of the slab, so it moves a lot from the other side. So I've looked at this a bit, try to figure out how I'm going to do it. I think what I'm going to do is backwards from what I normally do. Normally I surface the bottom side first, flip the slab, and then surface the top side. In this case, I'm going to get this approximately level with shims and blocking under the corners, and then surface this, and then flip it, and then we'll figure out what they want to do on the bottom side. But this will be the top of the table that they're going to make. And they'll probably do a resin fill here for this. I'm not sure what happened and where that piece is, but it's not here. So it's 49 inches wide, 55 long, 6 inches or so at the thickest parts. That's not a problem for the SmartBench. Yeah, we're right at 6 inches. I think it's a little thicker on one of these, on this side. About the same. So what I'll do is, I don't have, I mean, if you've seen the videos of mine, you've seen the different size Corian risers that I use so I can cut at high speed when surfacing. I don't have one, any pre-cut that are going to be tall enough, so I can either cut those first and stabilize, you know, and that way I can run the surfacing bit. I'm using a Festool insert cutter for the surfacing bit. It's 19 millimeters in total diameter, but I can run it very high, with a high speed, and just take small cuts. And but there's going to be a lot of material going away. So I'm going to just block this end, this corner up to get it approximately level, surface it, and then we'll flip it and work on the bottom side and figure out what we have to do. Okay, so I didn't have enough room with the Corian risers that I already had, so I'm cutting some taller ones. So that's 1/2 inch Corian, 0.47, spiral O, 1/8 inch bit, and I've cut these in different sizes and different heights, so I can slide these in at the end of the X rail, and it helps stabilize things when I'm up that high. So this one should be 10.5 inches from the bottom to the top. It doesn't give you 10.5 inches of cutting. It gives you, I think, 7 3/4 or in that range. I'll know once I get it on there because I put them in and then drop the beam onto the top of the riser. So that all works good. Okay, so here's the setup on this that I'm doing. I've made one pass. I just took a 30-second off just to try to see that I had all the high spots visually checked. And then as it was working, I lifted up this end of the, or this whole side of the slab another 1 inch. I had put these spacers, so I had 1.5 inches under this side to start with, started the surfacing, and then brought it up another inch by putting 2 more small spacers here. And this stabilizes the slab, but it gets it where I'm not going to be having to make an extra 1 inch depth of cut all across the slab by bringing this up closer to the cutter head. So this is still a wonky slab. It's not a great choice, but it's got some history with this family, so we wanted to do it. Here I just used some shims just to keep it stable, and this is not being held by anything, but it's good and stable on the table. So that's the first pass, I just touched off the tool, I loaded the job, and I'm going to run it again. This is with an 1/8 inch depth of cut this time. So, and this is the Festool bit, I'll show it, but it's an insert Festool bit with 19 millimeter and 4 cutters, I believe. It's insert tooling, so it's not a big bit. I've used bigger surfacing bits on the machine, but this is just does a great job. It's always a nice clean cut. So we're in the material here now, and it's going to be in it everywhere, I'm guessing. Okay, since I shifted this while it was making the first cut, it's a big depth of cut here. It's probably 3/8 right now. This is programmed at 150 inches per minute, and an 80% or 60% step over. I don't remember which. I can look it up. So I have slowed it down a little bit to 70% here until we get past or make this first cut. Once we've done this first cut and everything's at least flat, and it's because prior to this it was obviously a high spot here, and I just used this to give me a visual where I could adjust the slab before I went after it fairly aggressive. So this is great chip load, and it's just running around. I've got the throttle, I've got the wheel set at 3 for the speed, so that should be around 18,000, 21,000 RPMs. And I'm just going to let it go to town. There's going to be a ton of swarf to get picked up into the dust collection system, so I've got to watch that. I do use a dust deputy in front of the ShopVac. I may actually work on a 4-inch dust collection and work on that while it's cutting this. But it's just going to town. Okay, now that it's pretty much just taking an 1/8 inch deep depth of cut, which is what I had programmed. I've sped it back up to 100%. And the idea was that I could jack it up here at the controller and do it based on how the spindle sounds. So at 150 inches per minute, that's fine. But this is the deepest part that it's cutting right now, and it's just cruising through it. So I'll go 140% of that. And I still see I've got 3/4 of an inch I've got to get off. So if I'm going to have that as the table surface, that's the low point on that edge. Running in the air a little bit there, probably 3/8, and then back in the material. So this is boring to watch. Okay, so that's done the first pass. Got quite a lot to take off over here, so I'm kind of unhappy about it. Trying to figure whether I should lift up that side a little bit and just let it level things out. But I'm going to let it take the second pass and see what it looks like. It was programmed at 150 inches per minute, and that's fine. 1/8 inch depth of cut and an 80% step over. Apparently I didn't have it ramping in. I do need to have it ramp in because it got hot and burned, but then cut it away. So I'll change the code, and I'll stop it after this next. I've got it set for 3 different passes of an 1/8 inch, and so I'll stop it at this next one and touch off the tool again. Same location for the datum point, but touch off the tool and then have it ramp in so I can let it run unattended a little better. So check back in later. Okay, so it's about to finish the second pass. One of the things, I had left the dust chute off the spindle. But one of the things I do is I use the exhaust hose from the ShopVac as an air source. So I can clean out these tracks or something, blow off the slab without having to, have the compressor on. Just a light brush of air. You can blow off the slab. It's real simple and real quick, and the ShopVacs typically have a full exhaust hose set up for pumping out water as well. But it makes it easy to keep things clean while you're doing work without blowing stuff all over the shop. It's just barely moving stuff. didn't change the program, so the ramp end was aggressive on the bottom of the bit. So, but all good. Okay, so when I drew this in VCarvePRO, I just did a 49 by 55 inch oval, knowing that this end was squared off a little bit and that I'd have to adjust it. I've got the full pass here, but on this other end, I'm an inch short, just because of where I grab my center when I mark the center of the material. So I've got to go ahead and amend the drawing. So I'm going to make it an inch longer on this end. I'll just do it on both ends. And over here, the oval comes here, and I have to bend this out 2 inches. I can do that through node editing, or I can do an offset line and then just trim it. But I don't want it to be cutting this area because there's nothing here. And the same thing on the other part. If I were to do this as a rectangular cut, it'd be cutting a lot of air in 3 corners. This one's kind of square. It's not that bad from the perpendiculars. But I'm going to just do an offset line for 2 inches, and then I will trim it to it. And then I can combine those 2 tool paths. So same tool. So it can do this, and then it can come back and do this outside part here, and catch another inch over here on this end. And very easy to modify that way. And I think we did the full cut here. Yes. And I'm not sure about right here because we haven't gotten down that far. So I'm going to modify the drawing and send it out to the machine and let it do it again. Again, I send it out to the machine with Wi-Fi. I use FileZilla. I bought that years and years ago. It's just an FTP that works on wireless. And this was an 80% step over. So and running at full speed. I took the spindle speed and left it, but I adjusted the inches per minute. I had it programmed through VCarve at 150, but then I pulled it up 190% of that, so I'm at max speed through the material. So not a problem. My last pass, I'll do probably a 40% step over at a normal speed, and you won't have these swirl lines. It's really pretty smooth. Looks different and worse than it is, but I don't want to have to do a lot of sanding. And I have no idea what's going to happen on the flip side of this piece because of how cut up it is. But this will end up being the tabletop surface, and whether I cut some off with a chainsaw on the bottom side for some of that slice that's odd, I'm just not sure how we're going to handle it, or if he's going to resin and epoxy the whole thing to fill it. But there's so many cracks. I mean, he needs to do a lot of resin or epoxy work just to stabilize the slab. So off we go. I'll modify it in VCarve. Okay, I've changed the file to make sure I could catch all these outside corners. And now I'm doing a 3/16 step of cut. It's doing fine. Still the same 150 inches per minute. I did change the step over to 60% from 80. But this thing is so out of flat that doing the shallow cuts is going to take forever. So getting a little impatient. Good thing is, you can set this thing up and walk away. And in this case, I'm going down, the prior setup I had gone down 3 passes, and I was just doing other things in the shop. Showing the depth of cut. A big area that's got cut out. Okay, so it is almost flat. I'm going to take one more pass of 1/8 of an inch. Or I'm sorry, it's 3/16 I think. Now, kind of knock down this other corner. And if it doesn't get it, I'm just going to stop, because I've got to flip it and figure out what we're going to do on the other side. This was cut with the chainsaw. It was not cut for a cookie for a tabletop. And there was a lot more material removal needed than normal. But it's nice. It's got some spalting on the inside. Tool got too hot here, but that'll come out with quick sandpaper. Typically what I would do when I do a slab table, I'll just run through the grit with it and but this is nice and dark in some areas. A lot of cracks that they've got to figure out how they're going to fix with epoxy and stuff. But that's part of the fun of working with live edge stuff. Some of the bark did come off. Most of it stayed on. I am cutting at 150 inches per minute. When I was in the middle of the table, I had it jacked up using the speed control here. And that leads to some of this pass, seeing the passes. The final version, I'm going to slow it down to the normal speed, and you don't have that. But I do slow it down to normal speed here on the edge because I want to see if it can cut this off without knocking the bark off. And so far it's done pretty good. Just lost this one piece so far. The other stuff may come off. Again, I don't know when the tree was cut and how it was dried or anything like that. So just let it finish up. So in looking at this, a lot of these rings are not from me. That's the regular rings and the irregular rings of the growth. I didn't realize that when I had so much debris on top of it. So I'm going to pause it here and do the last one. Okay, so there's the finished slab. Well, this is the top side, and then I'm going to play with the bottom side now that this is flat. I can flip it and decide what we're going to do, or what I think you should do to the bottom. I just used the 5-inch palm sander in this area just to knock it down a little bit, and this is going to be stunning. This tree apparently had cracked, and they had quite a bit of water intrusion, and that was why they took the tree down. If you can see, this is going to be a good area. Throw a little mineral spirits on it just to show it. So I just sanded, this area. It took about 3 minutes, 5 minutes. That'll be something. Lots of rings. Lots of color variation. Look at this. Very nice. But again, he's going to have to come through and stabilize this with an epoxy or a ton of butterflies. I'm not sure what his plan is. But the color variation is strong, just with the amount of water that has seeped in. So, and again, we'll need to sand this down, bring it down. I usually do, this was 100 Abranet, so I usually do 100, 120, 220. And that'll get rid of any of these lines. You can't feel them, but because the disc was rotating, it plays with the grain. I don't feel those edges really at all, but they need to be sanded down to get rid of them. So raise the grain with water, sand it down, and knock those away. This will be a stunning piece. Because they're going to have to take the epoxy to fill these other cracks, I'm going to leave that little, I'll throw a straight edge on it, maybe another eighth, but that's all going to have to be brought back after they use the epoxy, and I'll surface it one more time, and then they can go through with the final sandings. This was just to show the wood and what it's going to do. Very strong. Okay, I literally was surprised at the that I couldn't feel the rings, the step overs, but I could see them. So I took the sander, still the same 100 grit, but after I had raised it with the mineral spirits, raised the grain, I just hit it real quick, and in less than a minute they're gone. So not unusual, just need to take those out. And again, we've got grain and density differences all over this slab, everywhere you see it. So it'll be a beautiful piece. So this is the Fest tool, insert tool. It's a 19 millimeter insert tool. It's programmed right now at 150 inches per minute. 1/4 inch depth of cut with a 60% step over. This is the third pass, so this is a total of 3/4 of an inch that we're taking off basically this half of the slab. Again, because it was the way it was cut. It's got all kinds of issues, but it was simply way too heavy on one side to look right at all. So I'm taking 3/4 of an inch off, and then we'll see where it goes from there. This is the 800 watt AMB spindle in the 110 version. Works great. Okay, so we just took the 3/4 of an inch down in 3 passes. That's your chip load. A lot of machines, you run them too slow and you don't have good chip load to cool off your bit. So okay, so I decided to go down another 1/4 of an inch, and then I'll be able to glue. This is getting thinner, so it's more flexible. So I'll be able to sand it up on its edge, just slather some glue in there, and then clamp it or lag bolt it shut and let it dry. That, of course, will bring it back out of flat, but this is the bottom side. We'll see what it all looks like after it's glued up, and then I'll surface this bottom side again to flatten it as needed. Again, there's an inch difference over here, or 1.5 inches. Once I clamp it, it'll be a little less, but I don't feel like I'm going to surface this whole thing away and lose so much on the edges of it. It won't look as good. So I can put some pieces underneath it and surface it so it is exactly flat on 2 leg mounts that I'll mount underneath here and here. I don't know whether they want to build a trestle base with it or what they're thinking of, so I want to give them some options, but I'm not going to shorten and thin the entire slab down that much. I mean, I can. It's just not the right tool for the job. But again, that's because this was so poorly done. But it's got some history for the family whose yard it came out of, so they wanted to see what we could do with it. If you're subscribing to my channel, I appreciate it, and I thank you very much. But if your dealer is not putting out videos that help you see other ways to use the SmartBench, ask him why. He may be the wrong dealer. I want to show you all kinds of different ways that you can use this unit because it is so versatile. I've got sign makers, cabinet makers, guys that make props, guys that build chapels. It's plastics distributors. There's any number of different ways this machine can be used. But it's good for people to see something else that it can be used with, even if it's not the method that they decided to use initially. But it can be good to see another way to use the machine, even if it's not the way you thought you would use it when you bought it. So, YetiSmartBench.com. If I can help you in any way, give me a call or hit my contact page and see what I can do to help you. Okay, I was moving it off the table, had it part of it on the table, part of it on the stool underneath it. and then brought it down to the floor. Was resting on the floor and the table. Sat there a second, then it went bang and cracked. So, not happy at all. But just with the extra cut layers and stuff like that, it just was bound to go. Not a bad piece for a resin table, but with all the through cracks and stuff that it had, the horizontal slices with the chainsaw, it just wasn't to be. So, certainly not a great example, but it did show the machine can do it. That was probably 100, maybe 150 pounds, I don't know. Figure out an oval that's 49 by 54, 6 inches thick, find out what that weight is. The machine can handle it, but the way it had dried and with that horizontal, that quarter of the unit had a cut from 1.5 inches to 1 inch to the other side, it just wasn't a good fit. So I will try to do a better job of videoing some of the other projects that I do. It takes so long to edit them, and it's just not my thing. I'd rather have people here and show them and teach them and move them through the process of learning about the software and the hardware and how it all comes together to create your products. So I'll try to do another live edge slab in the next couple of weeks or month or so. But if you have any questions, hit my contact page at YetiSmartBench.com. There's a contact page there. Fill that in, and I'll be happy to help you in any way I can. Thanks.